Welcome everyone. This is our second edition of Zed's Agentic Engineering series. I'm joined here by the amazing Kent C. Dodds. Kent, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm a full-time teacher. I teach people whatever I'm interested in. And right now, that is AI, specifically MCP. I live in Utah, and yeah, love it here.
Awesome. Well, so I understand that you have some sort of preliminary materials just to kick us off, just to give people an idea of like what MCP is, and we can sort of like have some shared level of understanding about that, and then afterwards we can talk about it some more and ask follow-up questions, take questions to the audience, and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. I'll share my screen then, and we can get going on that. Okay, so assuming you can see my screen, I'll take you through this kind of quick. I have like a full-length proper talk based on these slides that you can take a look at later. But I'll go through this quickly. I forgot, how much time do I have?
So we're gonna like the whole thing is like 45 minutes to an hour. That's counting all the Q&A and stuff like that.
Okay.
So
Yeah, so
whatever you like.
I could take you on like the proper version of this through some of these slides and then show a demo and stuff. So Um, yeah, so I want to help people start developing software for this next phase of user interaction in particular. The talk is titled Letting AI Interface with Your App with MCPs. I feel like that's a little bit long version of a title. So it's basically making it so Jarvis can do stuff. And so what is Jarvis? That's the question. And I'm not going to just sit here and watch this video, but if you have ever watched Iron Man, then you know Jarvis is the assistant that Tony Stark uses to do whatever he's doing. And in this scene, he is evaluating a crime scene and trying to figure out what was the cause. And Jarvis is creating all this really cool holographic imagery and stuff that Tony can kind of even walk around in and experience with gestures and voice and there's just a lot going on there that obviously AI is the core piece of, like taking the data sets from different areas and putting it together in interesting ways so that Tony can kind of see it in a different way. And honestly, it's not too far off. So here are some of the things that Jarvis does just in this clip, 1 minute clip. He's compiling a database from different data sets. We probably wouldn't want to compile it from FBI and CIA data sets, but like not for technical reasons, I think, but legal ones. Also, Shield is hopefully a fabricated agency, but I hope it's not real. I don't know. Maybe I hope it is real. I don't know. But yeah, so it's generating UI on demand. Maybe we can't do holograms, but like we can definitely generate UI on demand, and we're getting better at that all the time. Accessing records and relating those things, even creating a flight plan. That's always like the quintessential example for an agent is, oh yeah, I'll book a flight to this place. And I think it's kind of a tired example. Honestly, we're all tired of that example, but he literally does that in his that clip. So Jarvis is able to do a lot of things, and my question is, what can we not do that Jarvis did in this clip? What does Jarvis do that we are not able to do? And I would say nothing, with like a pretty strong asterisk, right? Like I said, we probably can't do quite the like holographic UI. We probably shouldn't be accessing the FBI data sets, stuff like that. But like pretty much everything that Jarvis does for Tony Stark, we have the technology to do. And so my question is, why don't we all have our own Jarvis already? Why can't I just have a device that I talk to, and that device or that voice goes with me, or that not just the voice, but the capability goes with me regardless of what device I'm using. It's in my car, it's in my home, it's on my computer, it's on my phone. Um, and maybe it's on my eyes, like in my glasses, right? Maybe we don't have an Iron Man suit, but We just it's with us everywhere, and it has the context of everything going on around us. Why don't we have that if we have the technology for it? And the fact is that we've actually been trying to do that for a long time. And I say the collective we. I haven't actually tried to do this myself, but there's a Home Assistant, and there's Siri and Bixby and Alexa and various others that we've been trying to build this assistant that is able to do all the things for us. So why have these failed? I really wish I could answer that question for Siri. I wish that I understand why Siri is so just awful. It's unbelievable how bad it is.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah. I'm surprised. I've said Siri a couple times and my phone hasn't responded yet, which normally it does. So actually, when I had an Android, I would say, okay, cool, in like a setting like this. Okay, cool, let's go on to this next thing. And my phone would always think I was saying, okay, Google. So like we have a little ways to go, I guess, on that aspect of technology. But it's not technological limitations necessarily. What's really holding us back from Jarvis is integrations. Every single one of the things that we could imagine we want to do is just really difficult to build an integration for. And like, sure, we can build an integration with your calendar. We can build it for your and that, if you are using one of the big calendar providers, we can build one for your email if you're using one of the big email providers. Like, it's all just very, you have to be using one of these big centralized services to really get anything useful out of these integrations. And the reason is because they don't have the ability to build an integration for every possible service you could be using. Maybe some of the services you're using are like just some small like local company. Maybe it's your city's municipality. You have like a website for your city and you can reserve a pavilion at the park for your kid's birthday party. You think Google is going to write an integration for them? No. And so what they do instead is they say, okay, well, we'll have this way that you can make your own integration with our stuff. And so, okay, now I expect my city developer, probably one person who only develops part of the time, to build an integration with Apple and with Google and with Amazon and with Microsoft. No, they're not going to do that. They're just going to say, use the website. I've got other stuff to do. And so this is like the lack of standardization around these integrations is a big problem on both sides. Google can't build every possible integration in the world, and those individuals can't build an integration with every other piece. And on top of that, I don't like reserve a spot like a pavilion for my kid's birthday every day, and so I'm not going to take the time to build that integration or to wire that up myself anyway. And so there's also like the dynamic discoverability of these capabilities. And that's unfortunate. I think that's pretty frustrating. I want to have my AI robot that can just integrate with all of these things dynamically whenever without any teams having to talk to each other. We need a standard of communication, and that's what the Model Context Protocol is. The Model Context Protocol says that these AI applications can integrate with these services, provided that the client implements the client side of the specification and the server implements the server side. Now we can talk. And it's very similar to the way that websites work and like web browsers. You've got the client, which is the browser. You have the server, that's the HTTP server that responds with HTML. And the Google Chrome team doesn't have to talk to the Bob's Chocolate Factory team to like be able to make that work. The Bob's Chocolate Factory team makes a server that serves HTML, it goes along with the spec, and Chrome parses that HTML and makes that request and everything, and it works. They don't have to communicate with each other. That's what MCP does for AI agents. And that's why I'm so jazzed about it, because it means that now we have the ability to actually make a Jarvis that can connect all these services and say, hey, I have like a complicated prompt. I want to, maybe I do want to make a trip out to London. And so it's going to go talk to Delta and schedule my flight. And it'll talk to the London Underground to get me my ticket so I can ride the Underground. And then Maybe I'm going for some school related thing. So it's going to go to Canvas. And oh yeah, I need to like tell my credit card that I'm traveling so that they are prepared for that. Whatever. Like, and it can take a single use case and use all these different services, which normally I would have to go to each of these services websites. Now I can have my agent do it. And a lot of people will say, well, okay, what if like the agent can just use the browser, right? The websites already exist, just have it use the browser. And yeah, sure, it can. And I think that for a while that will be the way that things go, but it's highly inefficient to do that. It's much, much faster to communicate via these text, like a text protocol. And so then we say, oh, well, just give me a list of REST API, like an open API spec or something like that. And that would just be a really bad idea because if you've ever used an LLM before, you know how non-deterministic they are. And so instead, we make effectively what is a website or a user experience for an agent. And that's what the Model Context Protocol enables. So to go a little bit into the history of things, a couple of years ago, ChatGPT showed up, and that was the first very popular host application for an LLM. We've had LLMs for a long time. Nerdy people were able to ask an LLM a question and get a response and have it generate text for years and years now. But this was the first time we had a generic application where you could just give it any text and it would generate tokens. And it had some semblance of being able to like answer your questions. And it may not always have been right, but it was pretty cool. The problem was that it couldn't do anything. And so if you actually needed a job done, you would have to bring all your context into the tool to say, okay, here's my code base, or here's my, here's some examples of my essays that I've written before, write a new one for me on like, here's the bullet points, whatever. And then you'd have to take the context out of it to go and accomplish whatever thing that you needed to do. And so then we get into phase 2, where the host applications start making tools and integrating with that. And they have some sort of bespoke protocol between the host application and the LLM, because LLM's just generating tokens. But the host would say, hey, if you need like additional context, just let me know, and I will go search Google for the answer and give you more context. And so it would build these tools. But here we're facing the same problem. Yes, it can do stuff, but it can't do enough because these integrations just take too long. And ChatGPT was like, okay, great. We're going to make a custom GPT thing. And now people can build to these custom GPTs. Well, again, that's the same problem. It's a walled garden. My city is not going to build a custom GPT so I can reserve a pavilion at the park. And so then, okay, well, how about people just wrap these LLMs and make a little chatbot for their application. So my application has support for we have RAG and we have all this stuff so that we can actually make use of this chatbot for my application. Well, that's also nice, except that it is only useful in the context of your application. And so if I'm a user, I'm still having to go to each one of these chatbots, load it with the context from the last chatbot and give it stuff and then take that context to the next one. I don't want to do that. I want a single Jarvis that I talk to it. It knows everything that I need it to know about me. And I say go, and it can integrate with everything. So we can't do enough. We need a standard, and that's what phase 3 was. Back in November, Anthropic showed up and said, hey, we've got a capability to provide context to our large language model. And we're going to open source this. We're going to have a good governance model. They're currently working on defining that. And we're going to accept contributions from the wider community. We're going to make this an open standard that anybody can use, anybody can build to. And since then, just so many people so many companies have adopted this. Clients aren't all ready just yet, but they are becoming more ready all the time. I jumped on board at the end of March, and in the following weeks, Microsoft announced native support for MCP in the operating system, which is just bonkers. Google announced support, ChatGPT announced support, Amazon has been contributing a lot to the spec. Microsoft has done a ton to contribute to the spec, and VS Code supports all of it. Zed supports MCP. Just everybody is all over MCP, and it's amazing. It's super exciting, and the reason is because it's an open standard that anybody can write to And there may be gaps in it, but there are no fractures or problems in the foundation, no cracks in the foundation. And so we can build on top of this to make some really awesome experiences, and we can build Jarvis. To take a look at the architecture a little bit deeper, MCP consists of a client and a server. The host application will spin up a client for each server that it needs to communicate with. And then the server, which is on the service provider side, will manage calling different tools and stuff. So the host application says, hey, LLM, if you need to do such and such, I can go and actually perform that action for you. And it does that through the MCP protocol. So that's the basic idea. Let me show you a little example of what this actually looks like in practice. As of, let's see, this was April. It has gotten even better since then. It is consistently improving over time. And this is a pretty exciting time right now. So here I was in London and wanted to make this demo. So I said, please write a journal entry for me about my trip with my daughter. I would like you to derive my location and weather from my device and make up a creative story. So normally if you're going to write a journal entry, you're going to write it yourself, but we'll just let the LLM do it for us. So here first it decides, okay, well, I need to get your location. And so it's going to ask if I approve using this tool to get my device's location. I created the Locationator MCP server that uses my device to determine my current device's current location. This was already installed, and so the LLM knew that this was a tool that it could call, and it determined that it should. This modal right here is what we call the human in the loop for this agent. So right now, especially, well, take a step back. You notice if you watch any time Tony is talking to Jarvis, Jarvis isn't normally asking Tony if it's cool if he does certain things. He just kind of does it. I suppose there are probably some examples where he's like, do you want me to fire this missile? but like in general, yeah, sorry, Richard, go.
Yeah, just looking up, stuff in the FBI databases, that doesn't require any permissions or anything.
Yeah.
Like that. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. But actually that's kind of the thing. It's like these AI assistants can kind of learn our preferences over time, and like, oh yeah, I know that you prefer using this tool. I know like you've done this before. This is fine. They can learn who we are and everything. But right now they're not there. And so they're going to ask your permission anytime they are going to do anything. And I think that's fine. And in fact, you can say allow for this chat, and then it'll just continue to use this in general too. So the user experience for this is one area that needs, there are significant gaps, and we'll continue to improve it. But especially right now where there's a low degree of trust in this anyway, it's probably really good for us to be able to approve these and have that human in the loop. So here I say, yeah, go ahead and allow getting my location. I literally asked you to get my location, so there you go. This is not my home address. This is part of the reason I show you the video instead of doing it live. This was actually when I was in London. So that's my hotel. You can find out exactly where I was when I was in London earlier this year. So from that, it says, okay, great. Now, you want to think about the AI assistant as sorry, I didn't mention this is Claude, by the way, for anybody who's not familiar. But you want to think about your AI assistant as if it is a human assistant that you've hired. You give the same prompt to a human assistant, and they're going to go to some service that will give them their current location. Maybe they know their current location, but imagine they're going to a service to get the current location because they need to know what the weather is at that location. Okay, so great. Now I'm gonna take the information I got from that service. I'm gonna input it to this other one, and that is really cool that it has that ability to do that. So this is a completely different server that is going to get the weather at my current location. This is a server that I was hosting on Cloudflare to get the weather. It's basically a proxy for AccuWeather. And so it takes the latitude, longitude, determines the current weather. And so now the client knows, or rather the application, Claude, knows where I am, knows the weather that is going on right there. And now it's going to say, okay, well, you wanted to write a journal entry, and we have the ability to do that with the Epic Me server. The Epic Me server is one that I have made That's basically an application that's only accessible through MCP. So like authentication, authorization, like all registration, everything is through the MCP server. And so here it's going to authenticate me with my email address. And then I say, hey, yeah, we've sent you a token to your email. At the time, I was running this locally, so I just logged it out to the console. And so we take that and provide that token. I actually foresee that in the near future, you'll have an MCP server for your email. And so it will just go ahead and check it for you automatically. You don't have to open up your email or anything either to grab that token. It'll just like, okay, yeah, you got that email. Let me stick that in here. So it validates the token. And now this is actually built into the spec, having authentication. It's using OAuth to verify that the client that you are using is attached to you. And it knows who you are. And so you can associate data. And in this case, you can create a journal entry and save that in the database. So we're going to create that journal entry. And now it's going to see, okay, you asked me to add some tags to it. So let me see what tags you have available in the database. And then I'm going to create a couple of tags and then apply those to the journal entry. So that's all pretty cool. And then here I say, hey, could you show me this entry? And the reason I wanted to show this is, yeah, okay, it can go out and grab that from the get entry tool. But look at the response here. I think in the future, we won't really show the response to the end user. I don't think that's necessary. But right now, where trust is kind of low and we're still trying to figure things out, it's useful. But the response here is just a bunch of JSON with a title and the content. And then my LLM takes that and it uses that as context for generating the next tokens. And presumably those tokens are going to be exactly what the journal entry says because I asked it to just show me the journal entry. But I might have asked it to summarize the entry, or I might have asked it to like highlight some of the most important points. I say show the whole entry. But what's interesting too is that it decided the most sensible way to display that is give this an H1 and then put this as like different paragraphs and then take the metadata about it and just put it at the bottom. You could imagine that maybe the LLM decides, okay, we're going to make a card out of this. We'll make it a nice UI and we'll make it look nice. And then actually take it a step further. Maybe this is a social media MCP server and I'm posting stuff and somebody posts something in Japanese and I say, hey, what did my friend share about like whatever? It comes back to me and it translates it for me because it knows I don't speak Japanese. All of that stuff just is kind of integrated because that's just the way the LLMs work. It's a pretty cool experience. So then I ask it to delete it and log me out, and that is it. So I don't necessarily think that the future of user interaction is chat based necessarily. I don't see like a big thread necessarily of the back and forth. I don't know that I really necessarily want to have individual conversations. I'd rather just have like at any time I just say a thing and it knows what I'm talking about and it fills me in on all of that. I'm not totally certain what that user experience is, but if
Carson Gross were here, Carson Gross would definitely say hypermedia is the answer. Yeah,
it's true. Maybe that's a part of it. But like ultimately, the guiding star for me is Jarvis. Like, what is it like for Tony to use Jarvis? That is amazing. I don't want an Iron Man suit, but I mean, I don't know. It seems pretty cool. Maybe not with like the weapons, but I do want a Jarvis, and I think that we have the technology to do this now. And so that's why I've focused on teaching people this stuff. So here are clients. Shout out to Zed as an MCP client here as well. Lots of the clients are developer tools, and of course they are, because developers are the one who are who have really gotten into all of this stuff. We're the ones building it. We're going to build solutions for ourselves. But we have some pretty significant players that are not intended for developers only. And we've got on the server side a bunch of these tools that are not necessarily for developers either. I think it's really cool that like PayPal's got a server. They were one of the really early ones. and Shopify. Like, can you imagine, like, have a conversation with an LLM? I'm not sure what to wear to my niece's birthday party. Here's the theme. Give me some ideas, and it gives you some ideas. And then it also shows you some products on Shopify or the Shop app or whatever. And all without having to leave the chat interface that you're used to, or not just the chat interface, but the assistant that we're all used to using. I don't know about anybody else, but I have used Google like maybe a tenth of the amount since ChatGPT became actually pretty good in the last year or so. I rarely do a Google search anymore. If I need to know information, I'm going to an AI assistant. So that's what I'm really excited about. For folks who are interested, you can go check out Epic AI Pro. I'm hosting workshops and stuff to teach people all about this to go a lot deeper. But I'm happy to go pretty deep on showing the actual code of how to build all of this stuff today as well. So that's it. That's my little presentation. Take a look at all this stuff and the end.
Very nice. Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. That I think that really gets the point across where we can all understand like the potential, but also like, you know, practically you're showing the JSON and stuff. Like we can see like what's actually going back and forth here to the clients and the servers and all that. So yeah, I mean, let's focus in on the developer use case because that is kind of our audience right now. So one of the things that comes to my mind is that you can break down the current like modern day uses of MCP into a couple different categories. One would be MCP servers that are just popular, like lots of people are using. I'm thinking of like, I know Puppeteer was popular for a while, and then I think there's another one that maybe supplanted it in popularity.
Playwright.
Playwright, yeah. So I've been out of the web development game for a bit, so
Yeah.
I'm kind of
That's good.
behind on that. But like, and then a second use case would be you want to build your own MCP server that's bespoke to what you're working on. So an example of that comes to mind immediately for me at Zed is like, since Zed is all written in Rust, it's not like, you know, a VS Code fork. It's not using web technologies under the hood. We don't have the ability to currently have an AI agent say, hey, go and do the equivalent of like inspect element to debug stuff when I'm like working on Zed and Zed. It would be really great to do that because we have our own custom like inspect element equivalent that we built ourselves, but you know, of course, none of the AI agents have any idea that that thing exists. So if we wanted to give the playwright type experience to ourselves, you know, when developing Zed, an MCP server seems like the very obvious, you know, custom way to do that. So that'd be a second use case is like bespoke to your project. And then the third use case would be something where you're actually, you want to develop an MCP server for external use. So this would be like the Jarvis use case where you're like, it's not so much that we're building our own thing for our own internal productivity, but rather like our end users are actually going to connect to our service via this. So I think we got time to talk about all those. Why don't we just start with the sort of like MCP servers that people should know about? So like what are some ones that you've, you know, encountered that people really like or like, you know, are really popular or widely used, and maybe also some that are sort of off the beaten path that maybe more people should know about?
Yeah, you know, I'm actually not as much a user of MCP right now as a lot of people. So my primary focus has been in building my own MCP server. So I've got a couple that I think are kind of interesting that I've built myself, but are kind of niche in their use case. But definitely one that people should know about is the Context 7, especially if you're a JavaScript developer. In fact, they might have docs for non-JavaScript libraries as well. But Context 7, like one of the big problems of LLMs is that they are limited to their training data. And so take another step back. One of the cool things about MCP is that if you squint, it's a little bit like RAG because you can.
For people who don't know, do you want to define?
Yeah. So RAG is an acronym for Retrieval Augmented Generation, where and you actually kind of do this yourself when you take a bunch of context or some code or something, put it into the chat, and then say, ask a question about it, right? You are retrieving information, you're augmenting what's being generated based on that information. Some people disagree on what the technical definition of RAG is, or what actually constitutes RAG. You know,
right,
true
like what counts, yeah,
sort of thing. But the basic idea is, you're just augmenting what's generated based off of additional context. So one of the problems is that models are trained on old versions of libraries, and so if you have a new version of a library now, you're like the code that's generated is going to be dated, and that stinks. And so context 7 has just 2 tools. One is a tool to look up the most appropriate library for whatever prompt you've given the LLM. And then the second one is to look up the most appropriate documentation for that library based on what version you have and the query that you have. Because most big libraries have more documentation than you would want to include in the context. If you give too much context, the LLM gets confused. And so they are effectively making a vectorized database out of all of these libraries. So
Gotcha.
that one's a really good one I use a lot.
That's cool. We were so the previous episode we were talking with Mitchell Hashimoto about the same kind of thing, but in the context of programming languages. So he's doing a lot of stuff with Zig, and Zig is, you know, like not as well represented in the training set as other things. And I'm working on this language Rock, and we talked about like Rock. We have this thing you can copy paste in that's like here's an explanation for the LLM's benefit of how the language works. It seems like you could totally do something like that with context 7 and just say like, yeah, it's not a library, it's a language, but same basic principle, right? Of like giving the model an understanding of like, you know, what is this thing that's not in your training set, or maybe has the training set is obsolete.
Yeah, it helps a lot with just getting the necessary context. And so folks who have been doing like wrapping an LLM for a chatbot for their own application probably has a vectorized database of their stuff. They could use that exact same thing for building their own custom server and just have a server tool where the LLM gives you a search query and then you return the context that makes the most sense for that. So this is a really good one. There's another one for managing memory. Like one of the really cool things about Jarvis is that it just remembers things about you and it knows your preferences and stuff. I don't actually use it. I haven't played with it yet. I think it's called Memory MCP. Yeah, here it is. So I've had people tell me that this is really good, where it'll just remember who you are, what you are into, all that stuff, what your preferences are on different servers to use. Then there's the Playwright MCP server that allows you to control the browser. So you could, most websites don't currently have a /MCP on them for you to connect to. You could actually use the Playwright MCP and tell it like navigate to this website and do this thing or whatever. And it can actually help you write automated tests as well if you're using Playwright for your end-to-end tests. So this is one that I actually used a little bit, and it's pretty cool. The one of the ones that's kind of more niche is I have an MCP server for the workshop app. When people go through my workshops, we have like I have a custom built workshop application experience. Actually, probably better to show you here. So this is a demo of having your AI assistant quiz you on the material in the workshop. And so the MCP server will retrieve the most relevant stuff that you want to be quizzed on and tell it actually has a prompt that the LLM will use to quiz you in a way that like helps you really make sure that you really understand the material. So that it's pretty cool. But again, that one's a little bit niche. You're welcome to try it though.
Sure. Well, I mean, that one's actually a good segue into the sort of like second category of MCP service, where this is something that's like pretty niche. It's like it's for, you know, your use case. And, you know, I mentioned, like Ed said, we have not done this, but we definitely could set up an MCP server that does our own inspect element equivalent and build our own Playwright that's for our own, you know, bespoke Rust code base. I'm curious, have you heard any stories of any interesting tales of people like doing that and like how it went and like, you know, what went well, what didn't go well? People do an MCP for their own custom internal development?
Yeah, I think actually the majority of MCP servers that people are building right now are specifically for that. They're like very bespoke for themselves. I have one for myself that's like helps me evaluate the content that I'm creating and stuff like that as well. And so yeah, that's actually fairly common to have. And honestly, I think of MCP as a replacement for a website.
Hmm.
So like we have websites that are very like sometimes it's a literally one thing. That's all it does. It's just one purpose website. You could have an MCP server to do probably that exact same thing. And then you also have some that are like consumer facing, some that are internal tools for your company. All all of that is a very good parallel to what you can do with MCP. So, and in fact, if you're thinking, okay, what could I build? Like, how could MCP help me at my company? What is useful for me? Look at the current process that the processes that you currently do. There probably a website associated to those things. There are buttons and links, and all of those things can be represented in MCP. And so then you just tell the LLM to do it, and it can do it for you probably. If not faster, then at least it can do it for you, so you can do something else.
Right. I'm kind of reminded of like that's an interesting mental model because if you think about it, that's kind of what like hypertext originally was all about with the web, is it was like, hey, we have all this information. Previously, it was in the form factor of like printed out on sheets of paper. What if we put it in a particular structured way so that you could get it delivered to you across the internet? And it's
Mm,
kind of the same thing. It's like you have the same information, but what if instead of putting it in HTML, you put it together in this other way using this different protocol other than the hypertext, transfer protocol, than the MCP, the model context protocol, and then now it's accessible to you in a more useful way. I like that
mm,
that analogy you gave earlier of sort of like, yeah, I mean, you could just say like, hey, model, go to the website or go consume this API, but there's downsides to that. It kind of reminds me of how when I'm asking like an agent to use tools, yeah, like you can theoretically do everything using the terminal tool. Like it can just use, to edit your files, it can use sed and stuff like that. But it's
mm,
way better at it if you have this like tool that's designed for that purpose. In the same way,
mm.
like, yeah, it can go to the website, it can just try to hit some API, like plain, but like it's just everything's going to go better if you actually take the time, or somebody takes the time to like build an actual integration there.
Yeah, yeah, and like that's nothing new or different from any layer of abstraction, right? Like you could do just about anything with zeros and ones, but assembly is much better, and then you can, C is a lot easier than that, and and
Right.
it just we layer on these layers of abstraction to make it more approachable for more people, which I think is yeah really exciting.
Yeah. And okay, so let's talk about sort of the mindset a little bit because like one of the things that I've noticed about the sort of the new generation of tools is that first there's sort of like a, well, I'm not even aware of like what's out there. And then I transition to like, oh, I'm aware and this is like really cool and I'm excited about the potential. And then at some point I transition into thinking more concretely about like, okay, actually I could build something with this. I could like reach out and take this off the shelf and like open it up and tinker around with it and stuff like that. I'm curious if you've seen any like, I don't know, success stories or strategies of companies kind of adopting this mindset, or like organizations or even individuals of just like going from thinking like MCP is something that other people do and I don't like, maybe I'll use one off the shelf, to being like, oh no, actually like this is in my toolbox, like this could be in my toolbox. Like I could just go out and build a custom MCP server and then I would just solve this problem for myself forever.
Yeah, I mean always seems to be a challenge, especially for like I'm finding this as a problem for myself. The longer I'm in this industry, you develop a workflow, and you don't want to take time to learn a new one, even if it's going to improve things. It just like you're going to be slower for a while. I had the same problem when I finally took a proper snowboarding lesson. I had to unlearn a bunch of my bad habits, and I got worse at snowboarding for a while until I started to learn the new stuff. So I think it's the same thing. People are used to the workflows that they already have. And the thing is though, like you to get people to do something like that, you have to have a compelling enough a reason for them to shift gears and say, you know what, I'm going to build my own MCP server for this. Like I'm going to try that out, and then like kind of force yourself to switch this workflow. And I think being able to say, okay, I want to, like you right now, you could open up Zed and you could say, I want to replace every instance of this variable with this other thing.
Yeah.
Right now, my workflow for that is like a built-in feature of the editor. I could
Right.
use an LLM to do that for me. it would cost me more money and it would probably take longer. It might do better. Like maybe it'd say, you know, if you're going to change that variable, it actually makes sense to change this one too. Um, and so like it could possibly be a little bit better, but like the net is probably worse. But what makes MCP really cool and just this workflow of working with LLMs is that it can not only just do that one task, but it also can kind of chain these tasks together. And that's where we get into agents and how agents can kind of just keep going and continue to improve things. Based on the context from the last thing you asked me, I also know that you want me to do this here. And so that's, I think, part of why it's hard for people to see the value here, because they see, oh yeah, you were able to send money to a friend using natural language, but like I've got the website and I can just go to the website and do it that way. Like it's not hard. But if you can say, okay, send money to the friend and then also, you know, schedule time on our calendar and then also send them a text to let them know I'm going to be late or whatever. Like it all kind of, once you do all of those things all together, then I think it starts to make a little bit more sense. And so, yeah, if you've got I don't think that everything needs to be an MCP server just yet. Like not every thing needs to like be converted to that workflow. But the more and more that we are using our LLMs to accomplish tasks like this, the more and more you're going to wish that you had an MCP server to do something, because it would mean that you could just stay in that one environment longer.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, so something implicit in what you just said is that it sounds like there are ways to get like better results out of MCP. One of which is thinking about it not in terms of like, well, I'm just going to take what I would normally put on a website and then just MCPify it, but rather thinking about like, what if an agent was using this and it wanted to use this as part of a multi-stage workflow? It's doing things in a loop. It's incorporating data from other sources and other MCP servers and stuff. So actually, I'm kind of curious if you have any like sort of tips and like things to watch out for, like things, you know, sort of failure modes that you can like avoid, or also like ways to make your MCP servers like even better than, you know, than if you just sort of do it in the naive way of just sort of being like, take this thing I've already got and just like put this protocol around it.
Yeah. So like, first off, one of the early things that people will think as they start learning about what it takes to build an MCP server is they'll say, okay, so I've got these tools that the LLM can call. So what if like I've already got this open API thing that's just HTTP, you know, API, and I'm just basically hot potatoing the requests from the LLM over to that API. What if I just had a tool that generated an MCP server out of my open API? That's like immediately most people are going to go there. The problem with that, there are various problems with that, but you really should be thinking about these assistants as human as much as possible. Like, how would a human interact? That's how we want to help the LLM use our stuff, or the assistant. And if you were to just give a human a page of all of the like your API spec and just like little inputs for all of the, you know, give me JSON, the human would probably make a mess of your database. Like most of the time, if you're thinking about a web application, a single button click, like a form submission, is going to involve a number of API calls, and they have to be called in the right order, and the data from one goes into the data for the other, and the LLM is just not going to get that right. It's not deterministic, and even if we did have Jarvis level smarts here, I'm still not sure that you would want to just open up your API for any API call to happen. So yeah, you don't want to just think about handing over your entire API as tools for your MCP server. So as far as tips on what you do want to do, I do think that looking at your website and looking at the buttons that are on there and thinking, okay, what is the use case? What's the workflow that somebody is trying to accomplish when they navigate to this page and they click on that and then they take that information, put it over there, or whatever. And honestly, a website is actually pretty good at helping you know how you want users to use your stuff, because your common workflow is you turn into a button, or like you turn into a wizard or something like that. And so just look at the way that the website has been designed and convert those use cases into tools. There are some like low-level tools. You saw in my demo, I had a get entry tool just to get the entry. So like there are some CRUD related things, but
Hmm.
if I were to turn that into a website, I would have a page that shows the entry. So like that makes a lot of sense to do something like that. Um, I also had an add a tag to entry tool. So that's more of a specific workflow that I expect people to be doing. So the other related piece of that is when you're building your server, you have these strings of text that are like the name of the tool and the description of the inputs and things like that. It can be really useful and also like the responses too. Um, Learning and understanding who you're talking to through those strings helps a lot. So sometimes the thing that's going to be looking at the text you're writing is going to be the LLM, like the name of the
Hmm.
tool, the description of the tool, the description of the inputs, and the responses. Those are all going to be like facing the LLM. The LLM is going to use that to determine whether your tool is appropriate for whatever the user's query is.
Hmm.
But then, like the title of the tool, sometimes and in fact, even sometimes the um, input description for a prompt that is a dynamic prompt. This is another feature of MCP. Those are going to be user facing. Some things are actually even the host application facing. You have structured output that's going to be used by the host application. So like
Hmm.
ChatGPT or Claude or Zed. And so that's another tip is just like when you're typing text in whatever context, just understanding who is the audience for this text helps a lot, especially with tool descriptions, knowing that and thinking that you are talking to another person who represents the user. And so talk to that person and say, you should use this tool if your boss, if the user wants to do this, right? That yeah, that's worked a lot. And then as far as like I guess kind of a general prompt engineering tip too, is just typically humans are better at this, and in my experience, LLMs as well. When you give the bottom line up front, like what are you asking me to do? Now give me the context. Rather than like lots of times, I think we just like paste here's all my code. Now at the bottom, I'll say here's what I want you to do with it. Now start with here's what I want you to do with it, and now here's the code. Because when the LLM is processing the code, or when our brains are processing the code, it's a lot easier for us to look for the specific things if we know what the
Hmm.
ultimate goal is as well. And there's prompts is one of the features of MCP that kind of helps guide the LLM to using the appropriate tools for a specific workflow. Um, and yeah, in that context, you are basically a prompt engineer, or I guess it's a context engineer now.
Yeah. Nice. That makes a lot of sense. So we're almost out of time. I did want to ask a little bit about that third category, which is just like, let's say that you are, developing MCP and your goal is actually to get someone outside your organization to use it. So it's like it's custom, it is bespoke, but it's not bespoke to your application for you to use, but rather for other people to use your application.
Right.
Um, I don't know how much of that you've seen. Like you kind of mentioned in the beginning that this is sort of like early days. But I don't know. Are people doing this? Like how often are people doing this? Is this something that
Hmm.
you think people should start be doing right now?
Yeah, yeah. So I showed earlier that there are servers already from companies that you're familiar with. Depending on the audience, like if your audience is developers, then you should absolutely be working on an MCP server. Like
Mm.
developers are they're getting it, they love it. If your audience is business, like productivity or not productivity, but like just like business users,
Yeah.
then you probably want to have an MCP server as well. Claude has support for it. They call them integrations. ChatGPT calls them connections. Um, and I don't know what Gemini calls them. But yeah, like these are built into the tools that everybody is using now. So if you have regular consumers, um, I don't know that we've had like a huge insurgence of regular consumers starting to use these things. I think right now, Claude, like each one of these requires a paid subscription to these services to be able to use their integrations or whatever
Mhm.
they call it. Um, I think a lot of people have paid subscriptions to ChatGPT and Claude. So that would be kind of like a send a survey out to your users kind of thing and find out if they're using these tools. But I also think that in the next 12 months to 18 months, users are just fleeing the browser as much as they can to go to these AI assistant applications. And you want to be there when they ask, like if you are selling accessories for a phone, you want to be there when they ask ChatGPT, I need a case for my iPhone, whatever number it is. I don't even know what number mine is.
Yeah,
But you want to be
yeah.
there so that ChatGPT is like, oh yeah, let me go use this MCP server. Right now, the MCP servers have to be intentionally configured and installed. And I hate that. I don't think that that's the way that it will be in the future. I think it'll be a lot more like if you were to ask a human to go and do something for you, they're going to go to maybe they'll go to ChatGPT now, but like they're going to go to a search engine. They're going to find the most appropriate tool and then they're going to use it. I think that's the way it'll be in the future as well. So, and there's discussion in the spec right now for talking about how to discover MCP servers as well. So that is going to be a thing in the future. And you just want to have yours be ready when the user's there, and not just your server, but also like your level of experience in building quality servers, because I do think that this is going to be a competitive advantage thing as well.
That makes sense. I mean, in the same way that, discovering web servers, was a problem, and now that's been solved in a number of ways. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
how else could you possibly discover MCP servers other than with similar solutions?
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, so why don't we just wrap up with like, how can people learn more? Like, where should people go for, if they want to get more details?
Yeah. So I had like all of this stuff right here, the bunch of different posts on epicai.pro. I am in the middle of preparing the next workshop for the fundamentals workshop, but I'm also working on an advanced workshop as well. I'm
Nice.
currently running into the problem where I think it may be a 2-day workshop, and so I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to schedule that.
Sure.
But yeah, if you want to just get into the very the fundamentals of MCP foundations, this is a really great place to start. So check out epicai.pro.
Fantastic. Well, Kent, thanks so much. I really appreciate all your time and all your context on this. Pun intended. Yeah, I think there's a bright future here and also just like an exciting present. So thanks so much for helping us all learn about it.